Hi, Connie. I'm Dr. Orr.
Nice. Hi, Dr. Orr.
Good
Awesome.
to be here.
Yeah.
We're
Happy
coming at
summer.
you. Oh my gosh. It definitely feels like summer. It's like less work, which it's not like I have less work. It's just less like brain work. My brain is less work focused and more play focused.
There you go. There you go. Well, it's definitely that time of year. Um, so today we're gonna do a short live. We're gonna talk about shadow work. We've definitely been touching on that in our archetype workshop series.
Hmm.
We did level one a couple weeks ago, and it was amazing. I think folks got a lot out of it. So we'll have some more updates and things like that around archetype workshop and vision statement workshops coming up in just the next couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
keep your eyes open for that. But I think one of the things that came up in terms of the shadow work is like we were talking about the like I love in the workshop one of our slides is like light versus shadow, like light work versus shadow work, how we talk about it.
Uh huh.
So let's talk about how we talk about it.
Okay. So, um, yeah, what is looking at our shadow? What is our shadow? It's the unseen, it's the things we're not willing to bring to the forefront. Um, One of the things that we talked about in the workshop is like sh- in order for there to be shadow, there has to be light,
Mhm.
right? It's different than darkness.
Yes.
It's yeah, you have to have some kind of light in there. So it's like, what are we bringing? How do we bring it to the surface? How do we bring the things that we don't want to look at to the
Mhm.
surface?
Or that are challenging or uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah.
And so I think I think one of the things that I want to say about shadow work is that it's you refer to it kind of like as the unseen, and I think of it more as like the subconscious, the
Hmm.
unconscious. And so when it's like you're bringing something to the surface, you're bringing something to the surface in order for healing and integration. And so it's like but what I hear you talking about is that piece where it's like we're in resistance to even bringing that to our conscious
Yeah.
awareness, to bringing it to our awareness, to be willing to do the healing work that is necessary in order to begin the process of integration, because when you're integrating your shadow, that's what you're doing is you're bringing it into the light.
Yeah. And before you even integrate it, you have to be willing
Mhm.
to see it. I mean, it's like, it's interesting, right? Because I've been spending so much time, I'm spending a whole month with my family, of,
Mhm.
my like birth family. And it's, I used to say, there's this great quote that's like, think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family. And that comes up every like Thanksgiving. I say that, right? And then
Mhm.
like it's want to do shadow work, want to see your shadow, spend
Mm.
some time with your family.
Right.
Because it's like our patterns are so similar, and it's easier to see other people's stuff than see your own. And so for me, I do my best to observe myself.
Mhm.
And so as and to like observe people as my mirror.
Mhm.
So, of course I don't do a great job at it. I try. And so I use this a lot of this time as like I see the things that come up for me that are bothering me
Mhm.
outside of myself, and then I'll apply it to me. So I'm like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing. I see
Mhm.
very clearly why they're doing this.
Mhm.
I do something very similar. Why am I doing it?
Right.
What is happening within me? What are my patterns that are causing me to behave this way, to have this like this habit of doing things this way?" And so it's actually a really helpful tool for me to be around my family for this long because it's showing me some things about myself that I'm happy and willing to adjust and work on.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I love that you brought up is um how entrenched these patterns are and how grounded and rooted they are in our childhood, in our
Oh, yeah.
developmental years. You know, there's a lot of these patterns that I remember somebody saying that like, uh was this something that the nurse said when you were born? Is this something that, your mother was feeling, when you were in the womb? Is
Mhm,
this something that, that an aunt or an uncle, or somebody around you in your neighborhood said to you when you were a kid and like it had this impact and
mhm.
caused you to, kind of shrink and contract or caused you to articulate yourself in a particular way or a particular volume or feel a certain thing, within your body. And so I think that that is, that those kind of, core wounds, that there's when you're taking a look at them, and especially like you're saying, like when you're around your family, it's much easier to see. I mean, I had this one job, and it was like my first job when I moved to New York, and it was like at some point within like the first like 3 to 6 months, I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, all these people that I'm surrounded with, that I'm working with, are emulating some of the same kinds of behaviors as this person in my family or that person in my
Mhm.
family or this person in my world or this friend or whatever. And it was like all the same things were kind of being
Right.
presented. I was being presented with them. And I just know for myself, um the when you're seeing something come up over and over and over again, to me, that's always a signal that I'm ready to acknowledge it. I'm ready to bring it to conscious awareness. I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to do the healing. I'm ready to integrate. And it's a signal that like you're strong enough to do this work. You're ready to do this work.
Yeah, and that it's like the right, with law of attraction, right? There's an activated energy within us that's pulling that energy
Hmm.
towards us. So finding what is within me that's activating, that I'm pulling this energy towards me,
Hmm.
and what is it wanting of me?
Right. Right. And that goes back to taking the time to be able to pause, take the breath,
Mhm,
and be able to ask yourself those questions. And like
mhm.
for you, you're in this month long, family visit, there's a lot of awareness that's coming up for you, but in terms of like actually doing the work, it might be once you're gone and back
Yes.
in your own space
Yeah.
that then you can actually set up and do the work, towards the integration. Like
Yeah.
this may just be the light bulbs, the awareness, the
Mhm.
knowledge, the information kind of coming into conscious awareness. So I
Yeah.
think that like giving yourself that pause, and sometimes it's just about noting it and writing it down and then waiting until you have the
Yeah.
time and the space to do the work on it.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, finding the appropriate time to do your work too is a big important one.
Yeah. And it's about dedicating the time to it as well.
Yeah.
Um, I think maybe one additional thing I want to say about shadow work is, and you mentioned this early on, is it's like it's not the darkness, right? Like the
Mhm.
shadow is um but, a lot of times it's our strengths that have been over relied on or underutilized, or
Yeah.
there's been some like funkiness with regard to these strengths, and we haven't been able to, it's almost like these are parts of ourselves that haven't been able to grow up. They're not
Mhm.
These are parts of ourselves that are not adulting yet.
Mhm.
They're like still like the infant, and I want everybody to take care of me, or they're the
Right.
teenager and they're like, "But I want to do it myself, but I can't, but I need help." Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to raise the other energies within you first before
Mhm.
you can tend to that, right? So, like, when we're talking archetypes, there might be one archetype that you just don't touch. You just haven't
Mhm.
touched. You can't go there. It's too much. It's either too painful or too scary or
Mhm.
too powerful, and you don't know how to work with it.
Mhm.
And you've got to tend to the other archetypes in your chart first in order for you to be ready to go into that one archetype
Right.
and bring that one into the surface and bring that one out of the cave into some light to start working with it, because you've got to be strong enough. It's like in in physical terms, like, I don't know, you can't go swimming in the deep end until you learn to swim in the shallow or whatever, like, I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
great analogy, but
No,
like,
that's a great analogy, because you have to be strong enough, you have to be comfortable enough, you have to be
feel
able
safe
to.
enough. Yeah.
Right. There's so many. No, I think that's a great analogy. Um, but it's so interesting, because one of the things that I remember saying in our most recent archetype workshop was, it's not like light and shadow is not like negative and positive. It's neutral. It's
I
it's
think that's
neutral.
really important to say that. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's like and how it manifests in the external world is like, that's when it gets like the judgment or the critical thought like put on it, that says, oh, this is a negative behavior, or this is a negative thought pattern, or this is a negative, response.
Mhm.
But ultimately it's it's like it's neutral until it's judged.
Yeah, until it's judged. Inside Out is such a great movie,
It is.
and it really portrays that, right? It portrays the positive, the negative of
Mhm.
feel I mean, it's specific to feelings, but to look at something like, anger, and to see that we need it,
Mhm.
right? To see the both sides of it and the neutrality of it too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up because that's really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think the other thing that you talked about earlier was, like, that, you know, most of us have 12 archetypes. Some folks have 12 plus archetypes in their, archetypal chart, and sometimes you're just not ready to work with an archetype, and I think and it's not about, like, feeling bad about yourself. Like, it's like,
Mm-mm.
this is part of the journey, it's part of the lesson, and maybe like that archetype really won't get activated until the second half of your life.
Yeah.
And then it gets activated in the second half of your life, and it's like a rock star for
Mhm.
you, and it really supports you and how you move through the world and all this stuff. But
Mhm.
part of the first half of your life was really supporting all of those other archetypes and raising their vibration and elevating and integrating, the shadow with the light in those archetypes.
Yeah.
So do
Yeah.
you do you want to mention like percentages at all? Is that like
No, I want to wrap it
okay?
up. I have to go.
Okay.
So we keep it short today,
All
short and
right.
sweet. Percentages are something that everybody can wait for, and
All right,
stay
fantastic.
tuned for
Another
that
video.
topic.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
But I do want to mention to stay tuned for our upcoming dates. You mentioned that briefly in the beginning. Upcoming dates on free vision statement workshops in September. Um, and you can find a link to that in our description. I will post that later. Um, yeah, I,
Awesome.
and we have a free mini course as well for you to be welcome to join in. So I'll post that in as well.
Yeah, and that you can find in our link tree. All
Yeah.
right, thanks everyone for joining us today. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.